Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I'm here today to do a Friday Reads video. I tried to get Teddy to join me. You can probably hear him walking away from me. He was not into it today. So I'm sorry. I think he wants me to play with him. So I'm going to make this quick today for two reasons. One, because Teddy needs attention and Teddy gets attention when he needs attention. And the other thing is, I did not have a very successful reading week, so there's not a whole lot to cover in the way of reading updates, except that I have made some decisions about what I want to do in April. I had talked about my tentative April plans in the reading wrap-up that I did with Joel, which will be linked down below. You did get Teddy in that, so that's something at least. The only big bookish news is that both of my videos for next week, in addition to the Friday reads that will be coming next week, are going to be shortlist related because we are getting the shortlist for the International Booker Prize on Tuesday. I'm hoping that I will be able to film a reaction to that shortlist on Tuesday and get it edited and posted. And then the same day we get the shortlist for the Carol Shields Prize for Fiction. And everybody was really excited about that prize when I asked about other book prizes. So I am going to do a reaction to the shortlist for that. But since they're announced on the same day, I am going to do the International Booker on the day, and then I'll do the Carol Shields Prize and just schedule it for Thursday. That way there's a little bit of a division. So it'll be coming a little late. And part of the reason I'm prioritizing the International Booker is that it's a little bit more known. Sure. But mostly, given the timing of the way everything is going to turn out, I am going to be in Ireland for the announcement of the winner of the Carol Shields Prize. And actually, now that I'm looking at my list, the International Booker is announced on May 21st, and I can't remember if I'm back at that point. I don't think I am. So I might not be doing reactions to either one of them, actually, now that I think about it. But, anyway, point is, both shortlists will be announced next week, and I'll have a video for the International Booker on Tuesday and then Carol Shields on Thursday. And then hopefully there will be a Friday Reads. And hopefully that Friday Reads will have a bit more of an update. I've been really enjoying a lot of the comments and feedback on my Pulitzer Prize predictions. Thank you for all of that and the enthusiasm. There are definitely people on BookTube who are Pulitzer fans. There are a lot of Pulitzer fans out there, but it does feel like BookTube tends to center more on the Booker Prize and the Women's Prize in the majority. So I'm really glad that people are excited to go on Pulitzer journeys with me. That has been fun, and I'm just excited that everybody is excited. I have been getting tons and tons and tons of comments on my video about reacting to the Atlantic's Great American Novel list, and there's just been a lot of comments on that video. So I apologize. I have been keeping up with comments, but the problem is the comments are so scattered among a lot of different videos that I feel like I haven't gotten to a lot of comments, even though I've been trying. So I apologize if I haven't responded to your comment. And I admit some of the comments on reacting to the Great American Novel one are kind of frustrating and a little annoying. And it just kind of brings out the troll in people. And a lot of people were reacting specifically to the fact that I said I would be happy for Gone with the Wind not to be on the list before I actually looked at what the list is. And trying to say, well, you can't erase this book. And so I'm not, just for clarification, I'm not trying to erase Gone with the Wind. I'm not saying it shouldn't exist. I'm not saying people shouldn't read it. I'm saying I don't think we need to pretend that it's a great American novel, given the damage that it has done, even though the damage in some ways is subtle, depending what part of the population you live in. That's it. I just think we can avoid calling it great. We can learn from it, hopefully, and maybe talk about it in context, in proper context. But, I don't think we need to pretend it's a great book. That's all I'm saying. It's allowed to exist. So that's been a little bit frustrating as well. And work has continued to be a little stressful. And so here's my decision about my April reading plans. In my reading wrap up for March, I had mentioned that I even then admitted like this is a bit lofty and sort of multifaceted. And whenever I do something like that, I feel like I'm setting myself up to fail, because if you have been following along for a while, you might remember that a couple of years ago, I set a reading challenge for myself that I called the Read Outside Your Comfort Zone Challenge. And it was this big, multifaceted thing with a lot of different prongs. And ultimately, as we were getting toward the end of the year, I started feeling like I had so much more to do in order to fulfill the challenge, and I was really starting to stress out. So I had to sort of suspend it and then, well, cancel really would be the word. Suspend, I guess, implies you're going to come back to it. But I just sort of said, you know what, I'm stopping where I was, and that's just what it's going to be, because I had too many parts. I was trying to read from different continents, from different genres, and from different genders and sexualities and races, and it just all became a little too much because I gave myself way too much to do. And I feel like I kind of knew this was happening with April, but I have been reflecting on it this week, and actually especially this morning, because it's been another slow reading week. I am very much in 2024 allowing myself not to rush through books or feel like I need to rush through books, because, it's an election year. That's stressful. Work has been a little stressful, and I am allowing myself to take more time, basically. And, I appreciate that everybody kind of understands. So I have not finished a book yet in April, which is fine. We're only 5 days into the month as I'm filming this, but I'm just allowing myself to take more time, basically. So my idea was that I wanted to continue reading some Irish and Scottish books. We'll add in some Scottish books, since March really just focused on Irish authors. And I wanted to catch up on some potential Pulitzer books. And I wanted to also just read some new things that had come my way. It's too much. So what I have decided is I'm going to, where my heart is right now, where my sort of emotion, what I'm gravitating toward, is something a little cinnamon bun, sweet, affirming, and something to help me calm down a little bit, and Pulitzer possibilities. Like, that's kind of where I would like to be reading right now. So, admittedly, including Irish and Scottish books right now is almost a sense of obligation, because I feel like I didn't read as many Irish books as I had originally wanted to in the month of March. It's an obligation I'm putting on myself. And because I read Irish books in March, I haven't read Scottish books yet. So I'm going to release myself from that. It's not where, I'm a mood reader. I can't really force things if I'm not feeling into it. So I'm just going to allow myself to let go of that part of my reading plans for April. And I'm not saying I'm not going to read Irish and Scottish books, but I think I'm going to let go of the idea that I need to read a bunch of them before Joel and I go to Ireland and Scotland. And I think already, sometimes when you make a decision like that, you just feel free, and you're kind of like, why was I doing that to myself? So it's been about an hour since I really definitively came to that conclusion, and I feel free. And again, go back to my channel name. These things are supposed to be fun, and sometimes having a channel makes me feel like I don't have permission to be a mood reader. And 2024 for me is sort of about getting back to basics and not feeling like having a channel means I need to be pressured to read through books quickly. Because for a long time, when I was doing these Friday reads or weekly reading updates, I would have finished at least one book. And week to week to week, I had finished at least one book. And if I hadn't finished at least one book, I kind of felt like a failure. It's nothing to do with what anybody else did. It's something I put on myself. So I'm trying to get past that in 2024 and allow myself the freedom to read at my own pace and according to my own mood, and not try to force myself to keep going if I don't feel like going. And I am also trying to allow myself to read what I want to read and not really fall into the trap of feeling like I said I was going to do this, so I need to do more, and, put pressure on myself, basically. I'm going to allow myself to do what I am in the mood to do a lot more. Like, having a reading plan is great, but I shouldn't feel like I have obligations to fulfill, because, again, this is all supposed to be fun. So that is the sort of adjustment that I am making to my April reading plans. I think if I get some more Irish and Scottish books in before I go, great. But I think I'm just going to focus on some other things right now. And I am also thinking that when I go to Ireland and Scotland, I have bookstores that I am planning to visit. So I can actually find a lot more Irish and Scottish authors while I'm in Ireland and Scotland. And then maybe throughout the rest of the year, I can keep revisiting that because, obviously, I haven't stopped thinking about Italy since Joel and I went to Italy. It's still very much part of my thoughts, my conversation, and my interests. So I'm pretty sure the same is going to happen with Ireland and Scotland. So I'm just not going to put the pressure on myself to do it all now at once. Let's talk about what I've been reading. I mentioned that I had been thinking about starting this book, and actually in my reading wrap-up, I had just started it. Well, I haven't made a whole lot of progress, but the print book that I'm working on is All the Right Notes by Dominic Lim. And there were, I think, 2 days in a row that I really did not make a lot of progress in it. And then last night, I made a good chunk of progress. So I'm on page 68, which is chapter 9. And this book is pretty much fulfilling what I need right now. It's a family story. It's a queer romance story. It's about music, which is interesting. I am someone who is, obviously I like music. It's who doesn't like music to some degree, but I am very much not a musical person. I don't play an instrument. I cannot sing. I can't carry a tune. I am sort of tone deaf. I have a friend who I went to college with who I would go to concerts with all the time. And one time he was like really into this song. He's like, I just really love what it's doing. Like, do you hear how the drum stops in this part? And then it goes beat, 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 and then it comes back. And I was like, no, I didn't hear that. So music is something that's almost entirely foreign to me. And this book very much centers on music, which you can probably tell from the title of it. So the premise is that you have this guy, Quito, and it does that thing where it's jumping back and forth in time. You have one chapter that's taking place when our protagonist is in high school, and then a chapter in the present day, and then a chapter in high school, back to the present day. And it's also doing something that is a pet peeve of mine in literature, because who I'm pretty sure is going to be the romantic interest is someone he went to high school with, obviously, who is now a famous actor named Emmett Aoki. And in the high school chapters, Emmett joins the choir, and Quito's father teaches choir, and Quito has grown up with music. His mother was a very passionate musician and singer, and he talks a little bit in the first chapter about how when she would sing, he almost sees color and associates it with music, but then the book kind of gets away from that, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And it's interesting as well because it's sort of almost the cover of the book is this sort of rainbow of color, and that's apparently how he experiences music. And I wish it would deal with that a little more. I think it might, because actually in the present day, he feels in a rut. He has been working in a piano bar. He has been filling in Broadway shows, but he hasn't been writing. He hasn't really been performing his own stuff. And he's just feels like he's sidelined from his own passions. Maybe that's why the color is not that important in this phase. But anyway, so Emmett joins the choir, and he has a lot of raw talent, but he's not trained. So the father wants to give him a solo. And of course he tells Quito, why don't you train him? Well, Emmett is a jock, and Quito is not popular. He's kind of made fun of in that way that a lot of queer kids were bullied or are afraid that they are going to be bullied in high school. So I'm very early on in the book, but that's where I've gotten things so far. So I'm assuming from the way the book has been written that some sort of a romance or an almost romance blossoms between Emmett and Quito in high school. And then something happens that causes them to separate, because now he is sort of fascinated by Emmett, who is this big Hollywood movie star, and at the same time kind of repulsed by him, but can't stop paying attention to everything because he's constantly surrounded by movie posters that have Emmett on the cover and things like that. And so the pet peeve, what set me off on this whole thing, is that it keeps teasing what happened to cause this division between Emmett and Quito without actually telling you. And that is a trope in a lot of books, not just romance. It's also like in mysteries and thrillers and things. It's something I don't usually like, but this is kind of pulling it off to a degree. I think also because the rest of the story is charming enough that I'm willing to go along with it. But basically what will happen is Quito will be talking to his roommate about Emmett, and will kind of, in his mind, not to the roommate, say, but I don't want to tell him about what caused us to not speak and why I'm so unwilling to see Emmett. And it's like, you can tell us. It's fine. Please don't make me... I'm not going to be in suspense until you do tell me what it is. But again, it's a pet peeve of mine. The book is charming enough that it is pulling it off. And it is... I like the focus on family and music. Family is very important to Quito. He has a very strong relationship with his father. He had a very strong relationship with his mother, who died when he was very young. And that is really interesting. Emmett has not come back into the story in the present timeline yet, and we'll see where it goes. But this is kind of exactly what I need right now, and it is pretty charming, and it's different enough from a lot of the other ones that it doesn't feel entirely formulaic. So that is good. So I'll be continuing to read this, and hopefully we'll be making a lot more progress. It took me a long time to start another audiobook, and part of that is because with everything else going on, I've also been trying to work on my sleep on top of everything else. And when I had sinus surgery in January to fix a deviated septum, the first 2 weeks were like, I wasn't sleeping because it was really difficult. You can't breathe through your nose, and it's just really difficult to get comfortable. After the first follow-up appointment, for about a 2-week period, maybe a 3-week period, I had the best sleep of my life because I have been a terrible sleeper since I was in junior high, or perhaps even earlier than that. And the thing is, over time, like for a while, seriously, 2-3 weeks, best sleep of my life. It was amazing. And then the bad habits started to creep back in, like checking my phone, looking at Instagram stories, and maybe watching a YouTube video or listening to a podcast. And then, oh no, it's 12:30 in the morning and I haven't been to sleep. I should shut down. So the bad habits have come back. And now this past week, I'm trying to get back on the track of remembering to sleep. And the difficult thing about that is usually that period going to bed is the best time that I have to listen to an audiobook, because the capacity that I'm going to have to listen to an audiobook during the workday is inconsistent at best. So that's a big part of it. And then the other thing is just with everything else going on, it just took me a while to start an audiobook. When I finally did, I picked up Here We Go Again by Alison Cochrane. And I am just about 15% into the audiobook. I think I have I think I'm actually at 13%. So I'm just under 15%. And if you follow along, you know I have read Alison Cochrane's other 2 books and enjoyed both of them. She wrote The Charm Offensive first, which, going off of the premise, does not sound like something that I should enjoy, because it is a queer romance set in a fictional reality TV show that is very similar to The Bachelor. Obviously, it's not The Bachelor for copyright reasons, but it's very similar to it. And you have a guy who works for that show and a guy who becomes a contestant on the show. And you kind of have to go with the premise of it. Like, you almost check your brain at the door, because it doesn't quite work. Because the guy who works for the show is a total romantic, and he believes in romance. That's part of why he wanted to get work for the show, because he's like, this is a show about people meeting. And then he almost willfully ignores the evidence that a lot of the stuff that goes on the show is manipulated and kind of implying romance that isn't really there. And the guy who goes on the show is not anybody who would ever go on a reality show about dating. He's very insecure. He suffers from anxiety. He does not like the spotlight. So why does he end up on this show? It doesn't seem like it's going to make sense. And it feels like there are going to be plot holes that are going to inhibit your enjoyment. However, I really liked that book in the end. I think if you go into it and just say, I'm going to go with it and see what happens, it's really enjoyable. And there's a very strong connection that develops between the 2 protagonists. And I really enjoyed it. So when Alison Cochrane released her next book, which was called Kiss Her Once for Me, I mean, of course I was interested. One, because I liked The Charm Offensive. Two, because it's a holiday-themed queer romance. I was all in, and I read it, and again, I really liked it. It's funny because that one, I don't know why I'm giving you an oral history of Alison Cochrane's books, but here we go. That one originally was sort of like an update of While You Were Sleeping, that Sandra Bullock movie, and then adapted into something that is completely not While You Were Sleeping at all, like in any way. It is a familiar romantic comedy trope in that you have one woman who is desperate for money, doesn't really know what she's going to do, and she sort of makes a deal with this rich guy who is a customer in the coffee shop where she had worked, where if she pretends to be his girlfriend or fiance, I don't remember which, during the holidays, he will pay her off, basically. Like, he needs to have a girlfriend for like an inheritance reason or something like that. I think they might even be getting married. I can't remember exactly what the arrangement is, but like, he needs a fiance or a wife, and she agrees to sort of a marriage of convenience so he can make an inheritance, and then he will sort of pay her off and she'll go away after a year. But it turns out, when she shows up at the family house for Christmas, that his sister is the one that got away. And again, it feels like a very familiar premise, feels like it shouldn't work, but Alison Cochrane makes it very sweet, and there's a great connection between the two protagonists. So again, it feels like it shouldn't work, and then it does. Here you go, or Here We Go Again also sounds a little bit familiar, and yet I have such faith in Alison Cochrane based on my previous experiences with her. And basically the premise is you have two women who, and this is actually doing the same thing that is sort of a pet peeve of mine that I talked about with All the Right Notes. So you have these two women who are friends in high school, and in the present day, they're almost like enemies. And there's some kind of a fight or a misunderstanding, and it keeps teasing what the fight is, but not telling you what happened. And it's fine. It is my pet peeve, but the way it's playing out, just like with All the Right Notes, I'm willing to go along with it. But it is sort of that trope. So you have Rosemary, who is very officious, organized, neat, and she kind of thought that she was going to have bigger, better things in her life and a bigger career. She went to Yale, she went to Columbia. She's very educated, but then she couldn't really find a teaching job, so she ended up back in her small hometown teaching at the same school where she had gone to high school. And then you have Logan, who, again, they had some kind of a friendship, and then something happened and they stopped talking. And Logan is basically chaos in walking form. Very disorganized, very casual and low-key and a little bit sloppy. And they both had an English teacher who made a huge difference in their lives. And because of him, Logan decided to become a teacher. And, she felt that he understood her and helped her find a path in life. And she wants to do that for other students. So she ended up becoming a teacher and ended up back at the same high school where she had gone to high school, teaching alongside this guy, Joe Delgado. And then he gets cancer. Again, this is the beginning of the book, so this is just the setup. That is not a spoiler. And I don't know what's going to happen with him. My impression from the book description was that so there's going to be a road trip. And that's sort of the forced romantic comedy set up for this. Rosemary and Logan are going to be forced on a car trip together over the summer. And of course, I'm sure along the way, they're going to reconnect and, sparks are going to fly and all of that stuff. And I don't know if the teacher is going on that journey because he is dying. And I don't know if he's going to go on the journey with them or if he's going to pass away and his last wish is that they go on a road trip. I don't know what presence or lack of presence he is going to have in the book. But the point is, Logan and Rosemary are going to end up on a road trip together to honor his wishes. And this man that has been very important to both of them as a mentor and a guide and just helping them find their way in life. So I'm into it. I am enjoying it so far. Again, I'm only like 13% into the audio of the book, but I have total faith in Alison Cochrane because of my past experiences with her, and we'll see where it goes and what happens with that. So, I haven't finished anything, but clearly I have a lot of thoughts about the things that I am reading. And I haven't really decided what my next book is going to be. I really want to read James this month, and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to do Huckleberry Finn first, because somebody commented, or a couple of people actually commented and said, you don't actually need to read Huckleberry Finn, you just need to know the basic story. And I didn't read David Copperfield before I read Demon Copperhead, and it ended up being just fine. So I'm kind of wondering if I can just jump into James. But I haven't made up my mind yet. So I'm thinking that might be one of my next books in my book haul, which will be linked down below. I also talked about getting Fire Exit and ARC, so I really want to read that. And I want to read Blackouts by Justin Torres before the Pulitzer Prize is announced, just in case the Pulitzer jury and board for this year decide that they want to go against the grain and recognize a book that has won the National Book Award for Fiction, because that just really does not happen very often. And check out my Pulitzer predictions for more on that. So that's where I'm at, and I would love to hear what you've been up to, what you've been reading, loving. If you have thoughts or recommendations or any of that stuff in the comment section down below. Again, the Pulitzer predictions video has been very popular. The Great American Novels video has been very popular. So there's been a huge influx of comments across a lot of videos because a lot of new people have found my channel. And if you're new, hi, how are you? Welcome. And they've been going back and watching older videos and leaving a lot of comments. So I feel like I'm getting a flood of comments across a bunch of different videos. So if I'm slow to respond or if I've missed yours, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best to catch up and keep up. But anyway, I think that's about it for this week. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.